Hi everyone, my name again is Dr. Kirk Prine, and we've been doing a video series on how mindset is in your whole body, not just in your brain, as we prepare for our body story experience. So whether you're going to join us for this body story experience training or not, these can be nuggets for you to kind of muse on in your own work. You know, one of the tenets of body story work is the word experience. It's that gnosis. It's that you're knowing. How do you know something? And most of what we think we know is what we've learned. But how we really learn things is through experience. So when things are encoded in our bodies, that's how we know things, and it's through those lenses and filters that we live our lives and create our lives for better, for worse. Our heart's desires, our diminished hopes, all of those things happen because of the experiences we have in our bodies. So mindset is in your body. It's not just in your brain. And I'll tell the story. So behind me I have the image of the phoenix. So, you know, we all know kind of many mythologies about the phoenix, but the phoenix rising from the ashes. You know, there are those turning points in our lives a lot of times, and oftentimes they happen when things have been really extremely painful, or tragedies, or something very disruptive to our lives, and that gets deeply encoded in our bodily memory. And also what actually happens out of that is what I call a story. So let me tell you, of course I have my handy dandy, we call them bunnies, but my stuffed animal here, just to hold on to as I tell this story about my own life and why my gnosis, my knowing, for a very long time was, as a kid, I was sexually abused about age 6. It was for a very brief time. And in that sexual abuse, what would happen is I would leave my body. And so I know a lot about leaving my body, and as I've talked about before, coming home to the body is where most of us need more healing. But the story that got encoded in me was, in my abuser was my father, and in that abuse, after the abuse was over, he would actually hold me. And you know, it kind of breaks my heart open just to even tell you that. But in that, I learned that the idea that I could not have pain, I could not have pleasure, could not have the pleasure of being cared for, of being held, of being seen. I could not have the pleasure without pain. So pleasure without pain, those things got coupled together, that I had to have pain to have pleasure. And so here I am as a young lad growing up, and for a number of years following, and the abuse was just a very short period of time, but I would hide in closets. And so as I hid in those closets, though, I cultivated my listening skills. So I listened to what was going on outside of me. And that has become an incredible gift to me as a healer, that I kind of listen beyond sound. I listen to the energetics as well as the sound around me. Of course, as an abuse survivor, I was listening to, is the world safe? And I didn't want to be seen because I didn't want to be hurt. So my story and my work, my body story work, has been for me to know that I am loved and seen and held and cared for, and that I can have all of that without pain. So the work that we do in body story work is really about clearing those toxic stories so that our hearts are open and available to whatever it is that needs to be rewired. For me, what needed to be rewired was that I could have pleasure without pain. And that juicy story of changing that has not only gifted me, but allowed me as now a body story life coach to help facilitate the healing of many, many people through their process of whatever the pain is. And a lot of times the pain, as I've talked about in other videos, that gets encoded in our bodies, and the stories that get encoded in our bodies are not necessarily about a peak painful experience or trauma like I had, but many times about diffused experiences, things that just kind of happen repetitively. So, I tell this story many times of a woman who did some work with us, and I talk about her rewiring of her story as she discovered, after coming up with a life-threatening disease, that she just didn't believe that she could heal her disease. And in that process, what came up for her was just some images, and images of when she was a little girl running to the door, and she and sisters would run to the door as a little girl, meet Daddy at the door, and somehow always what would happen is she would not get picked up. She would not get held while the others did. And it was just some benign thing, like, the mother calling the father in and saying, there's something on the stove, can you get it? The phone's ringing, can you get it? But somehow this little girl didn't get what the others got. So she encoded in her body a story that was, now I'm facing this life-threatening disease. Other people might find a way through it and even make it a chronic manageable disease or work with it. But I can't do that because I don't get what other people get. All of that not conscious material, but material that she had made an agreement with herself that was encoded in her body. So part of changing the experience is not only having loving moments where people see you and hear you and know you and validate you, love you unconditionally. Those are important, but detoxifying the old experience of letting go of that story, not carrying it, as we talked about in a prior video, not carrying that story around, giving it back to where it belonged, so that energy gets neutralized, and the hope and the power and the safety of making a dream come true for her, which was simply that she might have more days on the planet in her body, alive and well. And as far as I know, she's still doing well. After she did some of what we call completion work on this story, she actually is surviving and thriving. So I hope this is a juicy nugget for you to think about. What do you know, and what are the stories that are in your body that might inhibit you from manifesting your heart's desires, no matter what that is, in your business, in your body, in your relationships, and in your world. So hopefully hug on yourself today, love on yourself today, enough to say, I'm ready to look inside and untangle a story. So I'm going to leave you with a last quote. So Rumi, kind of like the phoenix behind me, the mystic Rumi says, your task is not to seek love, but to merely seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. body story work is not about you seeking love. It's about finding the barriers to keep you from really loving yourself fully, embracing your pain so that it might become part of your beauty and your gift. Okay, another nugget. Namaste.